So you know you want to add AI into your business, but so far all you've been able to figure out is how to copy and paste responses from ChatGPT. No worries, I can help you with that. Let's check out Diaflow. This is a brand new app that's designed to help you build internal tools for your business. Whether it's a customer service AI chatbot that's trained on your data or something else entirely that just handles a part of your workflow, you can probably do it in Diaflow without writing any code. Best of all, Diaflow is currently available as a lifetime deal from my favorite place to buy software, AppSumo. I've got a link down below for Diaflow, but you should know that this is not a sponsored video. I'm going to go through and show you how it works, as well as give you some feedback about what I like and dislike. Hopefully at the end of the video, you can decide whether or not this is a good fit for your business. To support my content, all you have to do is click on my AppSumo link before making a purchase for Diaflow or anything else you might happen to buy over at AppSumo. I very much appreciate your continued support of this channel. Now let's get right into it and try out Diaflow. First up is automations, and this is going to be more similar to like your Zapier clones or things like that. Basically, it's a workflow that can be triggered via a cron job, a webhook, or a third-party service. Now, they use Outlook as an example right here, but there are certainly others. Let me show you what other third-party services are available. We'll go over to More and then Integrations, and we're going to look up here where it says Add. Click on that, and then we've got our APIs. So we've got Slack, Outlook, Telegram, SERP API, which I assume is something related to SEO. I'm not familiar with that. And then SMTP, so just any old email server. That can be our trigger for our automation. Of course, you can also use webhooks, which is going to open up the doors to a ton of other services. So we can create an automation just clicking on create right here. And I can see I've got my automation created. I'll open this up. So here's my canvas to build out my automation. Now, every automation is going to need a trigger. That's what actually kicks things off. It can be a scheduled time, so it runs once per day. It could also be a webhook that's received, or even an external integration, like we just talked about, those integrations that are available. So after the trigger occurs, then we'll have an action to add an item to our automation. We just click the plus button here, and we can see all of the different actions that are available. So we can send data over to Slack or Hunter or Claude, whatever you want to do. Now, we'll get into some specific examples a little bit later on, but this is automations. You can think of it as a fancier version of using something like Zapier, where we have a lot of AI power under the hood. One of the really cool things about this is you can mix and match the models. So if you really like what Claude does for something, you could have that do part of the actual response, and then you could send it over to OpenAI where it might be a little bit more affordable. Okay, so that's automations. Now let's head over to apps. This is where we can build our own internal tools. Now you could just click right here to build a new app and start from scratch. But they've done something really nice, which is to include some templates for other very simple apps that we might want to dig in and kind of see how things work under the hood. So let's go over to templates right here. And notice there are some filters at the top. We can look at apps as well as chat agents that are available. These are the only two categories right now that have any templates. I find that the template section is a little bit light. You know, there's nothing under automations. There's nothing under featured. There's nothing under Q&A. There's nothing under marketing. So hopefully they add a lot more templates, and this becomes a really good resource for a place to get ideas to how to utilize AI in your business. But for now, let's check out some of the template apps that they include. Looking through the app templates, you're going to see that most of these are going to be things that you could accomplish using something like a ChatGPT project or a Claude project. But we do have a lot more features baked in here. So don't be turned away just by the simplicity of some of these templates. Remember, this is only a starting point. Like this one right here where it says generate a social post from an article. What I think is cool about this is you can just give it a URL. You don't have to copy and paste the whole article. You just give it the URL and it's going to create a social post for you. Let's go ahead and try this out and see how we might be able to customize it. So I'll click right here where it says clone to your workspace. It's going to prompt me to confirm that I want to create a flow. Now keep in mind, you do have a limit on the number of apps that you can create based on the plan you choose from AppSumo. I'm just on tier 1 over here, so I get 6,000 credits per month and I can create 5 apps and tools. So this one will utilize one of my slots. Okay, so here is that flow. You can see that the trigger is going to be a user input. It's going to be a URL that I provided. Then it's going to create the content for LinkedIn. Now I could change this to be another platform if I preferred. Maybe I want to create a Twitter post. It's called X now, by the way. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step where it's actually going to scrape the web from that article. Then it's going to send that data over to OpenAI, where it's going to give it a custom instruction here. And then finally, it's going to give me the output. Now, there's really nothing stopping me from connecting this up to another tool using something like a webhook and have it actually doing the post for me. I don't necessarily recommend that. You might want to review it first, but if you get confident enough in the output, there's no reason you couldn't continue on from here. To test this out, I'm going to provide a URL for one of my articles on Avocado. Here it is. You can go ahead and see that it's basically a summary of my recent review that's posted here on YouTube. So I've got this article. I'm going to provide it over to Diaflow. All right, it's pasted in the URL box right here. And then to test this out, I can go ahead and just execute the flow. All right, it's gonna run through everything. It's scraping the web. It sent it off to OpenAI, and now I have my output. Here it is, discover Avocado, the new pop-up builder that could replace ConvertBox for just $59. And it goes on and on here. So if I wanted to use this, I could just copy and paste it and go right over to Twitter. But I could also publish this right here. Let's try to publish this app. All right, so now I've got a URL for my internal app, and I can make this public if I want, but I'm gonna keep it private. So I'll grab the URL and let's see what it looks like on the front end. All right, now this is much more user-friendly. And remember, I could customize this to be exactly what I wanted. I'll add in my URL right here. I can decide whether or not I want to utilize hashtags, which I don't. And maybe I want to choose not to include the original link as well. Then I'll choose the platform. This time, let's do Facebook. The style, I'm gonna do, how about professional? Do I want this to be a call to action? Maybe not. And no emojis this time. So let's execute this. Now it's running the output. You can see it is processing. And down below, I've got the output. Very easy to copy and paste this or just download it to a text file. So those are apps. Now I've only just scratched the surface on what they can do, but let's move along to AI agents and chatbots. Now, what's really cool here is, of course, we can create a chatbot and put it on your website, but it can also be trained on any data that you want to provide, which is a good bridge into learning about how data is stored inside of Diaflow. Now, on all of the other things like automations and apps, we could actually reference any data that we wanted to. The data is stored in any of 3 different places. We've got tables, drive, and vectors. Now, what are the differences between these? This is where I feel like the tool gets a little bit overwhelming. So let's just start with vectors, which is what I think you're going to utilize the most. Vectors are data that LLMs can handle. So we can provide any data inside of vectors, but then it's essentially going to convert that into a format that the LLM can actually use. So we could add some data here, just clicking on the add button. I can add a document, an article, or a URL. And yeah, about the URLs, you can even add your own sitemap so it can crawl your entire website. For now, I'm just gonna stick with that individual link for the Avocado review that I used in the previous example, but you can see there's a lot of options here. I could enter multiple links or even upload a document full of links. By the way, this is important. There's also something called groups, which is essentially like a folder system for our vectorized data. This is really important because often you're going to be pointing your apps or your automations into a particular group where you may have stored relevant data for a particular task. Imagine that you're trying to provide customer support. Well, you could have a bunch of information about your products and services into a vectorized group, and then you just point the LLM at that data and it's going to know how to answer questions more articulately. But for now, let's just scrape this one article. I'll go ahead and hit create here, and it's going to go ahead and start to process that URL. Now, later on, if I decide I want to move data around to different groups, no worries, we can always do that later. Let's go ahead and add a group. I'll click add group right here, and I'll call it my reviews. Hit create. All right, so here is my new group called my reviews, but it's empty. So let's go back out one level here. I'm under groups. I'm going to switch over to files. And now I can actually move that file over into groups. And by the way, we can see that it's been crawled successfully. And now the LLM can utilize this data because the status is complete. All right, back to organizing. We'll click on the triple dots over here and we'll choose add to group. And now I can very easily add it to the my reviews group. Hit save, and it's going to show up. If we go back into my reviews, there is my URL. Now, if I want to create an AI agent based on my reviews, I would just load all of those reviews into the vectors, and then I'd create the agent, point it over at that data, and it would be able to answer any questions about my reviews. So let's try that. Let's go ahead and build a new AI agent here. Up at the top here, we have modes. We can do simple or advanced. I'm going to stay on simple right now. So first of all, we've got our response settings here. Basically, this is our custom instructions for the bot. Here are the default responses. You're an advanced, intelligent, and professional chatbot tasked with answering questions effectively. So you want to customize this to whatever your company is answering questions about. You can turn on and off markdown format and emojis if they're not appropriate for your business. and even set the output length to be short, long, or auto. We can add in shortcuts, which are basically suggested responses for your visitors. The people using the chatbot will see those as little buttons they can click to easily answer questions. We can set up our opening text right here. You can see what it looks like over on the right. This is the preview of the chat, and here is my opening text, so I can modify that, make it on brand. Maybe I want to ask an opening question. I'd be able to do that as well. Then we've got our AI engine over here. It says the LLM model for the AI agent to use, and we can choose OpenAI, Anthropic, Google Gemini, Cohere, and Minstrel AI. And if you're wondering, on OpenAI, we've got GPT-4o Mini as well as GPT-4. And on the Anthropic side, we've got a few different variations of Claude available for us. There's a memory section right here where you can choose how much the chatbot is going to remember about the conversation when it will become saturated. Obviously, if you make this bigger, it's going to utilize more credits and get a little bit more expensive for you. So I'm going to leave it at the default setting. There's an option down here to suggest follow-up questions if you want. So just toggle this on, and we can even use custom prompts for those follow-up questions if you like. And then down here is what I consider to be one of the most important parts, the knowledge sources. This is going to differentiate your chatbot from something like ChatGPT because it's actually trained on your data. So under knowledge sources, we're going to choose our vector files here. So I'll do a vector group, and I'll select my data, choose my reviews as the group. Now, as I add more files into that group, it will automatically update the chatbot. Now I could test out the chatbot, ask it questions about Avocado. So I'll say, what score did Avocado get? Now, the only way it would know the answer to this is if it accessed the vector group. And here we go. It got an 8.3 out of 10. Pretty good. By the way, if you're curious, I'm using Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet for my model. Okay, so when I'm all done setting up my chatbot, I've got a few options for how I actually deploy it. I could just share a link to chat directly with the chatbot, but I have a hunch that most of you are probably going to want it to live in a little bubble on your website. So here's how we cover both of those scenarios. First of all, we'll click publish right up here. Once we publish it, we'll get a link that we could make public, and then you can just share that. Anybody can go on and chat with your bot. Or you can keep it internal if you prefer. This could be a tool for you to engage with to maybe reference things that could be totally useful as well. But probably what you want to do is click right over here where it says deployment. This is going to give you the instructions to actually get this up and running on your website. So just add in your domain here if you want to see what it's going to look like. We can customize the look and the name and everything if you'd like, by the way. We'll get into more of that a little bit later on. So here I'm going to be previewing it. This is what it'll look like if I actually put it on my site. Overall, kind of a cool little icon down there. I like the animation. Very AI-ish. Kind of has the new Siri feel to it, which I guess, let's be honest, we probably don't want our customers to think that our AI is as bad as Apple's. Which I digress. If you actually want to move forward with that little gadget on your website, just copy and paste this part here into your head tag and this part down here into your body tag. Very easy to do that. I recommend using the Fluent Snippets plugin on WordPress, or if you're using Ghost or any other CMS, you've got a little place where you can inject code. Just copy and paste this. You'll be up and running in no time. Or you can even embed it on an iframe. That way you can have the chatbot on your site without having to have yet another little circle in the corner of your page. Now, one thing you might want to do before actually publishing this or making it go live is editing what it's going to look like. So to do this, you can go right here where it says edit app. And then you can go ahead and give it a name like, review agent or something like that. Upload an icon right here, give it a description, and that way it's gonna look a little bit more on brand on your website. It won't look, like it just says some gobbledygook for the title of the agent. All right, so let's proceed to the next item on the left-hand sidebar. We've already talked about templates, so let's go to pages. Pages are as simple as a chat with a document style system, or it can even create new documents for you. So let's go ahead and let's try this out. Let's click new up here, and we've got some choices. We could create a blank document. We could generate a response to an RFP. That stands for request from proposal. If you don't work in an industry with RFPs, consider yourself very lucky. Essentially, what companies will do is send out these requests for proposals where they'll actually ask for a ton of information from your business about how you might be able to provide a service to them. And they're going to send this to a lot of different companies at once so they can select the best service provider. Responding to RFPs or requests for proposals can take a tremendous amount of time. So they've actually built out a workflow here so you can actually generate RFP responses in no time at all. I'm not going to go into this in this video, but they do have a pretty decent AI generated video to show you how the whole process works. We can also generate blog posts or generate contracts here. So let's go ahead and try that out. Let's try to generate a contract. All right, under contract types, we can do a sales contract, an employment contract, a service agreement, a lease agreement, a loan agreement, a partnership agreement. There's a lot of different types of contracts we can create here. I would not like to be a lawyer in this day and age, or maybe I would. I could just generate all of my contracts right here. All right, how about a sponsorship agreement? I do sponsorship agreements from time to time. Some of my videos are sponsored. This one is not. So I'm pretty familiar with how these things work. Let's generate it in English. All right, let's continue. Now I can add in party A and party B. We've got all of the contact information here. Continuing to the next screen. All right, on the next screen, it's asking for a little bit more detail here. You can see there is section 1, 2, 3, 4. Man, it's a pretty long contract. It goes all the way through about 15 different sections, and each one is asking for some more information about the contract. Now, I could definitely spend a little bit of time and go through each one of these to really tweak things, but unfortunately, I don't have a sponsorship agreement with Nike, so I'll just go ahead and proceed to the next step. But yeah, I can tell this basically would cover all of my concerns if I were doing a sponsorship agreement. So overall, pretty impressive. All right, so it is now generating the actual document for us. It says 0 of 23 sections completed, and I'll just wait for it to dial in that entire contract. Now, while this is working, I'm sure you're concerned with how many credits everything is using. I can tell you that I had 6,000 credits when I began this video, and I'm currently at 5,920. So barely used any credits at all. I will see if this updates to be substantially lower after the contract is generated. Yeah, that contract is still churning away here. So let's just quickly look at the number of credits included in each of the different pricing tiers over at AppSumo. Before I do this, I want to point out that the price is increasing in approximately 4 days as of the recording of this video. So if you want to lock in the best rates, definitely check out my link right away to get that deal dialed in. Remember, this is a one-time cost. So if you like what you're seeing, and I honestly think you probably should be, this is a pretty great tool. If you want to get the best deal, go ahead and buy a plan now. So 6,000 credits, $79. That's the plan I currently have. You can upgrade it to get to 10,000 credits for a little less than double the money. And if you go a little less than double the money again, you get 23,000 credits. And finally, on tier 4, we get 50,000 credits. Now, as we're doing that, the number of users, this is actually a pretty good collaboration system. There's a whole user system where you can have different permissions. That increases as well. The number of automations, if you get up to tier 4, you get unlimited automations, unlimited apps and tools, and unlimited agents and chatbots. So if you're going to be providing services for clients, or you have just a lot of activity, a one-time cost of a little less than $600, definitely going to be well worth it here. I mean, what's a month of ChatGPT Pro? It's $200, right? So we're talking about less than 3 months of ChatGPT Pro, and you have access to these as long as this tool sticks around. Yeah, the other data to keep in mind here is the number of records that you get per table. So from 5,000 all the way up to 15,000. We haven't really spoken about data tables yet, but that is coming. And then we've got our drive storage. We've also not spoken about their drive storage, but that is available anywhere from 10 gigabytes all the way up to 75 gigs. These are pretty generous allotments of storage, in my opinion, because you don't necessarily need to be storing like huge video files or anything here. It's primarily going to be documents which don't take a ton of space. But otherwise, there's no differentiation between the features in the plans. All of the features are included in every plan. It's just the limits that you're going to be buying. All right, the contract has just loaded here, and you can see it looks pretty professional. I mean, it's definitely very thorough. It's a long contract. It's almost 5,000 words here. So I'd want to go through and just, definitely dial this in exactly as I wanted. So, right here, it says like insert specific amount or value. If I wanted to, I could select this right here, and then I could use AI to enhance this. I could say, maybe I want to improve the writing. So I could have it go through and just tweak specific parts. So that's where if you wanted to just create a blank document, you could utilize this to just write content as well. So it doesn't have to be anything where you're actually responding to or using one of their very long prompts to actually generate the document. By the way, the editor is very good. It feels like the lexical editor, if you're familiar with that. So you can go ahead and just write your content right here. So I'll tell it to write a paragraph about the lexical editor. It's going to generate that for me. And I could replace the selected, insert it below, copy it, try again, or discard. So I'm going to insert this into my document. There we go. When I'm done with my document, I can export it. I've got the option to export to Word, HTML, Markdown, plain text, or Diaflow vectors. So I can take my docs and go right into a vectorized format in order to use it in my chatbots or apps. By the way, by default, it's using OpenAI's GPT-4o as the model for the editor, but you can change that if you like. If you want to go over to Anthropic or Google, you can certainly do that. And you can even connect up your knowledge sources to your pages. So just choose the vector group or the vector data that you want, and then you can utilize the AI to actually write documents based on the connected data. So really cool. And by the way, there's also an area over here for a persona and a prompt. So you can really dial in the AI to write just as you prefer. Okay, so we're just about ready to wrap up pages, but I wanted to point out here that that contract that I generated, almost 5,000 words, ended up using 281 credits. It's really nice here. They've got a good detailed system to show you actually how many credits you're utilizing. You just go over to history and you can see all of the different types of use cases, like here's my tables. I haven't used any data for tables yet, so it's a good transition. Let's talk about tables. Tables are places where you can store data as well as query data inside of your apps, as well as your chatbot, really anything you might build inside of Diaflow. You can reference different data tables. So I've got a very simple one here based on social media posts. If I wanted to connect this up to that app I created earlier to save my social media posts and the platform that they're for, it'd be very easy for me to go into that app and then just edit it to add an extra node to save off the outputs inside of my data table. And then later on, if I wanted to, I could even reference that data inside of another tool that I was building. So yeah, overall, tables are a very easy thing to use. You just add in columns, you add in rows, and that's where you can save your data as well as pull your data out. Some things just make sense for table-based data. You can think of contact information as an example. You don't want to store that necessarily inside of a vector when looking at a table is going to be a lot more user-friendly. Okay, so that is tables. We've already talked about vectors, but between these two items, there's another one called Drive. This is where you can store and download full images, documents, anything that you might want to store and utilize inside of your apps or automations, you can put inside of Drive. This is kind of like a cloud storage solution, right? We have folders, we can add images or documents to those folders, and we can either pull them out or access them inside of our flows. Yeah, so Drive is really easy to use. You can create folders, upload your files right here, and then you can utilize them inside of your flows. Let me show you. I've got an automation here. So right now it's just a trigger to run at a particular time, but I could add in another step. And maybe I wanted to convert a PDF to an image. I could choose this as the next step. And then after that, I can save that over to Drive. So I would just go to built-in resources and then go to Diaflow Drive here, and you can see how this works. Very simple to kind of chain these steps together. So there you go. That is at least a surface look at all of the features inside of Diaflow. This is an extremely powerful platform with a lot of versatility. You don't need to be a developer to use it, but you're going to need to have at least a technical, logical thinking brain in order to string together some useful automations and flows. I think they could just beef up the number of templates they have, and it would really make a lot of people enjoy the platform a lot more. As is, I do recommend utilizing their AI chatbot that shows up when you're actually building a flow. Like for example, right down here, it says chat now, and you can actually use their documents in order to learn how to use the platform. This was really helpful to me as I was making this video and kind of learning how to connect all of the dots together. Other than that, just getting in there and getting your hands dirty, you're gonna find out in a hurry whether or not you like this tool and whether it will serve your business. For me personally, I see a lot of potential here, and if I were to buy a plan, I would probably just go with the biggest one, because to me, in my situation, $559 for unlimited automations, unlimited apps and tools, it seems like a pretty safe investment. Now, I'm also an AppSumo Plus member, which means I get to take 10% off of this price. So it's really gonna be like right around $500 to get unlimited access and 50,000 credits per month. That is really a good deal in my opinion, but obviously I can't make the decision for you. You have to do with what's right for your business. Overall, I'm gonna go ahead and give Diaflow an 8.6 out of 10. By the way, AppSumo has been crushing it lately. I believe 3 out of the last 3 tools I have reviewed have all been in the 8s, so definitely some great tools out there. Check my recent videos if you're not sure what I'm referring to. My name is Dave. If you've enjoyed this video, hit that like button, get subscribed if you're new around here. You can support my content with my AppSumo link in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.